January 3, 1889. A piazza in Turin, Italy. A carriage driver is wrestling with his stubborn animal. Out of patience, he brandishes his whip, mercilessly lashing the horse. A man nearby, with a distinct, bushy mustache and sunken eyes, witnesses it all. Suddenly, he rushes forward, not to stop the driver. He throws his arms around the horse's neck and ... bursts into sobs. He collapses on the spot. It was the end. For the next 11 years, the greatest, most controversial mind in Western philosophy would be lost to silence and madness. That man was Friedrich Nietzsche. He was the man who declared, "God is dead." He gave us the concepts of the Übermensch and the will to power. But why did a genius, a man who challenged all of Western civilization, meet such a tragic end? Nietzsche's story isn't just about philosophy. It's a modern Greek tragedy. It's a story of extreme loneliness, of relentless illness, of betrayal, and of an abyss he dared to gaze into. Until, as he himself warned, the abyss gazed back into him. Nietzsche was born in 1844 into a devoutly religious family. His father was a Lutheran minister. Ironically, God took his father from him when Nietzsche was only 5 years old. This event planted the first seeds of pain and doubt in the young boy's mind. He grew up as the little pastor, serious, pious, and academically brilliant. His talent was undeniable. In 1869, at just 24 years old, Nietzsche became the youngest ever professor of classical philology in the history of the University of Basel, Switzerland. An extraordinary achievement. He hadn't even finished his doctoral dissertation. The academic world was ready to welcome a new star. But they didn't know they were welcoming a stick of dynamite. From the very beginning, Nietzsche was no ordinary professor. He was heavily influenced by Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism. And he idolized the composer Richard Wagner, whom he saw as the savior of European culture. In 1872, he published his first major book, The Birth of Tragedy. The academic world was shocked. This wasn't a dry philological analysis. It was a passionate work of philosophy, praising the Dionysian over the Apollonian. It was savaged by his colleagues. They called it rubbish. Nietzsche's first tragedy began. He realized he didn't belong in academia. He was an outsider. And at the same time, his most cruel companion arrived: illness. His entire adult life, Nietzsche was tormented by crippling migraines, violent bouts of vomiting, and failing eyesight. He had to take large doses of opium and other painkillers just to be able to work. Imagine trying to write the most profound philosophy while your body is at war with itself every single day. This physical pain shaped his life affirming philosophy. He believed one must overcome suffering, not flee from it. In 1879, at age 34, unable to bear the strain of his illness and his teaching duties, Nietzsche resigned his professorship. He began his 10 years of wandering. These 10 years were his most creative period, but also his most lonely. He drifted across Europe, Italy, France, Switzerland, searching for a climate that would ease his physical suffering. He lived in cheap boarding houses with almost no friends, no family, just his suitcase and his manuscripts. And then he faced his second and third tragedies: disillusionment with his idols and with love. His great friend and idol, Richard Wagner, disappointed him. Nietzsche was disgusted by Wagner's growing nationalism, pomposity, and anti-Semitism. He divorced Wagner brutally in his writings. He lost his greatest confidant. And then, Salomé appeared, a young, brilliant, captivating Russian woman. Nietzsche, then 37, fell madly in love with her. He proposed. She refused. Not only that, she entered a bizarre love triangle with Nietzsche and his friend. Paul Reed, this famous photograph, though intended as a joke, perfectly captures his tragedy. He was rejected and humiliated. In his despair, he wrote, "You are going to women. Do not forget the whip." Nietzsche's loneliness was now absolute. It was in this profound solitude in Sils Maria that an idea struck him like lightning. eternal recurrence. And that's how Zarathustra came to be, just like that. Pretty wild, right? He wrote the classic, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It was his most beloved work. He said, God is dead, he's not alive anymore. Old morals have fallen apart, leaving us lost in nihilism. To fill this void, he offered the Übermensch, not a dictator, but a courageous individual who creates their own values, who affirms life, accepts suffering, and embraces eternal recurrence. He continued to write relentlessly, Beyond Good and Evil, on the genealogy of morality. He attacked Christian morality, calling it a slave morality that glorified weakness and resentment. But here was the fourth tragedy. No one was listening. His books didn't sell. He had to pay to have them printed himself. Critics ignored him. Old friends abandoned him. He was a genius shouting into the void. His intellectual and social isolation was complete. He wrote in his journals that he yearned for a single friend who could understand him. There was no one. 1888. His fateful year, like a candle burning brightest before it dies. Nietzsche wrote 5 books in 1 year, including his bizarre autobiography, Ecce Homo, with chapter titles like Why I Am So Wise and Why I Write Such Good Books. Was it supreme confidence or the first sign of madness? Then, January 3, 1889, arrived. After collapsing by the horse, Nietzsche was brought back to his apartment. He began writing the madness letters, sent to the King of Italy, to the Pope, to his friends. Signed the Crucified or Dionysus. The greatest mind in Europe had shattered. What was the cause? Syphilis? A hereditary illness? A brain tumor? Or simply the total mental and physical exhaustion from a lifetime of fighting illness and loneliness? We will never know for sure. Nietzsche lived his last 11 years as a living shadow. He didn't speak, he didn't write, he just sat vacant. He was cared for by his mother, and after her death, by his sister, Elizabeth. And this is where the final, and perhaps worst, tragedy occurs. Elizabeth Förster-Nietzsche. She was an ardent anti-Semite and German nationalist. She was everything Nietzsche was not. While Nietzsche was incapacitated, and especially after his death in 1900, Elizabeth took total control of his literary estate. She edited his unpublished manuscripts. She chopped, stitched, and published a muddled, out-of-context book called The Will to Power, distorting it to fit her own ideology. And when the Nazis rose to power, they found in this distorted version of Nietzsche a perfect philosopher. The Übermensch was twisted into the Aryan master race. The will to power was twisted into a justification for military brutality. A philosopher who spent his life fighting against herd mentality. Nationalism and hatred became the official philosopher of the 20th century as most brutal regime. That is the final tragedy of Friedrich Nietzsche. It took decades after World War II for scholars to rescue Nietzsche from the Nazis, to restore his original manuscripts, and to reveal the far more complex, humane, and profound thinker he truly was. Nietzsche lived like a torch, burning so brightly that he consumed himself. He chose loneliness in his pursuit of truth. He accepted pain as a part of life. He wrote, "He who fights with monsters should be careful, lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." Nietzsche gazed, and he never came back. Was Nietzsche's life a warning or a call for us to live bravely? What do you think was his greatest tragedy? The madness, the loneliness, or the betrayal of his legacy by his own sister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and keep questioning.